Today, let's discuss two huge post-flop mistakes that you must avoid if you want to have any chance of succeeding at poker. The first thing you must understand is that winning poker is not about making sick bluffs, huge laydowns, or fancy plays. I promise you, it is not. I know that's what's shown on TV, but you have to realize a lot of televised poker is showing the most exciting 8 hands out of an 8-hour session. Okay? Most poker is just about making fewer mistakes than your opponents and having good, strong fundamentals. In this webinar, I'm going to teach you how to avoid making these big errors in the pots where these errors are the most costly. Mistake number 1 that most people make is overplaying very clearly marginal made hands. Losing big pots with a medium strength hand is a massive leak that I see commonly in people who come to me asking how to improve their skills. Whenever poker players come to me asking for help, I say, so show me some hand histories. And a lot of players make the mistake of drastically overplaying medium strength hands. You're going to find that from a game theory optimal point of view, you should often be taking passive actions with your medium strength hands. Let's take a look at a hand that someone sent me from 1-3 at Aria the other day, wondering where they messed up. Let's take a look. We raise it up with Queen 10 suited. Big blind calls. We're playing 1-3 no limit hold'em. Flop comes 10, 9, 5. Opponent checks. We continuation bet. They call. So far so good. Turns to 6 of hearts. They check. Check behind. I realize that when you're playing against the absolute worst players in the world, perhaps you can value bet here. Sure, if you think they're going to play really straightforwardly against you. If they're going to play really straightforwardly against you, such that they mostly or only raise with better hands, and they call with some worse hands like a random 9 or a random 6 or a random ace high, then sure, feel free to value bet. But if you do value bet against these players, you must fold when they raise you. So what does this player do? They make a bet. Fine. You know, it's at least reasonable because the opponent can call with some worse stuff. But then the opponent raises to $40. You can see me, my hands are, I'm just like annoyed. This is a spot where you cannot continue with this hand. You simply must fold. You likely have the best hand when you bet and get called, but when you get check raised, you are done. But this person called. And I hate to break it to you, at 1-3 no limit especially, if you bet the turn and then call a raise, you are not going to make it. River's a queen. Oh boy, well, you're doomed now. Opponent bets 75. Most people just find a call, but if you think about the opponent's range, assuming you don't think they are bluffing all that much to begin with on the turn, and the river doesn't really change much at all, they probably are still drastically under bluffing. This is just a fold again. This is an annoying spot, but you probably just don't have the best hand ever, given the way this hand is played out. This player called, though. Where did they go wrong? Opponent shows the nuts, of course. They went wrong by betting the turn to begin with, because they presume the opponent is really straightforward. But then, if you do bet the turn, presuming the opponent's really straightforward, you must fold when they raise you. This is a big blunder that's going to make it hard for this player to win if they do not plug that leak. Let's take a look at another hand from 2-5 at Aria that someone sent me. I think this was actually a good hand. We raise it up with the King 7 suited. Perfectly fine from the cutoff. Big blind calls. 9-7-4. They check. We can check or bet. I think either play is reasonable. But on these connected boards against players who play well, you definitely want to do a lot of checking behind because the big blind's going to have a whole lot of 9s and a whole lot of 7s. I realize our hand is like actually okay against that, but in general we want to do a lot of checking. So we do let it go check. Fine. Turns a 3. They bet $20. Easy call. River's a 2. Whatever they bet, we're going to call. They bet 35. Feels kind of value heavy, but realize we're getting good pot odds. We only need to be good 25% of the time. Easy call. We beat the 10-8. Good. This is how you're supposed to play the medium strength hands. Notice that if we instead bet the flop and got check raised, this would have been a miserable spot where we probably call the check raise or maybe fold, but if they keep blasting it on the turn, we probably need to find a fold. and we end up getting blown off for our equity. So this hand was played perfectly well. Medium strength hands want to check behind. I cannot make this any more crystal clear to you. Mistake number 2 is not playing balanced strategies. Balanced essentially means playing a mix of both strong and weak hands in the same manner to avoid being predictable. And if you're always balanced, you keep your opponents constantly guessing, which will result in them making way more mistakes. So many players make the blunder of playing all of their strong hands in exactly the same way, and all of their weak hands in the same but different way, right? Like they put a lot of money with the nuts, they don't ever bluff. Or maybe they always check raise huge on the flop with only draws, right? A lot of players, especially in the small stakes games, make the mistake of being very unbalanced, either because they just have not studied poker very well, or perhaps because they think their opponents are so bad that they can get away with whatever they want to do. And I hate to break it to you, we're not playing poker in 1999 anymore. A lot of players are actually kind of decent even in these small and medium stakes games, which force you to play at least somewhat balanced strategies unless you definitively know what your opponent does wrong. And I hate to break it to you, just like it's not 1999, you will not definitively know what your opponent is doing wrong very often. Let's take a look at a hand where we raised it up with ace-king, playing 1-3, no limit. Again, these are hands that my students sent me. Flop comes king, 10, 6. Big blind checks, easy bet. We bet $13. Opponent calls. Turns a 2. Big blind checks. Definitely go for a bet again. We go for the overbet. Ooh, I love this. This is a nice hand. This is a spot where a lot of people do not go for overbets, but when the turn brings backdoor draws and the board is very coordinated and we're playing pretty deep stacked and your opponents are probably a little bit calling stationy, this is a great spot to go for value with your best hands that are likely to be vulnerable to being outdrawn, like top pair, good kicker. Opponent calls. Rivers a 2 of spades. Opponent checks. Easy, all in. This is also a spot where if you felt like being balanced, you could conceivably have some bluffs. Notice there are various backdoor flush draws we could easily have. We could also have various gut shot straight draws and open-ended straight draws on the flop. So if we have all those draws and we want to be able to win the pot with those hands by bluffing some portion of the time, we also need to make sure we are going for value. And this is a spot where even a hand like king-queen can go for value, maybe even a hand like king-jack. And you may say, isn't that too thin? What can call you? You have to realize, though, if your opponent's folding out a king in the spot, they're probably overfolding. And that's quite good for you because it lets you get away with all of your bluffs. We do go for full value with the ace-king, though. Opponent does have king-jack, which is, to be fair, one of the best hands they can have within reason. And we scoop a nice pot. But notice, this is a spot where we definitely would have some bluffs. Here's another spot, 7-6 of spades. We raise it up, big blind calls, king 10-4. Is that the same thing we had last time? King 10-6. Again, these are hands that were sent to me by my students. Flop comes king 10-4, similar to the previous spot. Opponent checks. We go for a bet. Opponent calls. Turns a 2, giving us a backdoor flush draw. Or you know how this one's going to go, right? Opponent checks. We are going to bet, and we bet big, just like we would do with ace-king. Nice hand. Opponent calls. Rivers a 7. They check. You know, if we did not river the 7, we would probably go for the bluff in this spot. But when we river the 7, I think checking it back becomes reasonable enough because we actually do have some showdown value because we now beat hands like queen-jack and ace-jack and ace-queen and ace-5 suited, etc., right? So I don't think we need to bluff this hand anymore, but if we did have a worse hand at this point, like 8-high, busted flush draw or whatnot, we probably would go for a sizable bluff. Check, though. They showed the king-jack. They probably weren't folding, and, we probably got a little bit let off the hook in this spot because we rivered the 7. So, that is it. 2 huge post-flop stakes that you must avoid if you want to succeed at poker. Again, tip number 1 is to stop overplaying marginal made hands. Please take more passive actions, like checking and then just calling, with your good but non-premium hands. And tip number 2 is to stop lacking balance in your post-flop strategies. You must play both your strong and your weak hands in the same manner in similar spots in order to stay unpredictable. And if you do not do that, then anyone who's paying the least amount of attention is going to have a really clear idea of what your bets indicate. And once your opponents can figure out what your bets indicate, like if you bet big, you have the nuts. If you bet small, you have a marginal hand. If you check, you always have nothing. If they can figure that out, you are doomed and you are not going to win. And I want you all to thrive at poker. That's going to be it for today. If you enjoyed these 2 huge post-flop mistakes you must avoid, do me a quick favor and click 2 buttons below. Click the like and subscribe buttons. I would appreciate that. Good luck in your games. Have fun. Thank you for being here. If you really enjoyed this video, if you really want to help out Jonathan Little, tell 2 of your friends that you enjoyed this video. Good luck. Good luck. 2s are lucky. And I'll talk to you next time.